You know that exact feeling I'm talking about, right? You're standing at the absolute starting line of a brand new goal, and you are just radiating energy.
Oh, yeah. You are totally hyped up.
Exactly. You go out, you buy the expensive new running shoes, you download like 3 different productivity apps,
Yeah.
you clear your entire weekend schedule, you sprint out of the gate with this massive intensity, thinking you're going to completely change your life.
And then, fast forward exactly 3 weeks later.
Right. You haven't even thought about the goal in days. The pristine shoes are buried in the back of the closet, the apps have their notifications silenced, and you are literally right back where you started.
Mhm.
Why does this always happen? I mean, why do we always burn out when we actually try to change?
Well, it's arguably the most universal human experience when it comes to self-improvement. We constantly make the mistake of confusing that initial burst of raw emotional energy for actual sustainable momentum.
Because it feels so powerful in the moment.
It does, and we assume it will last forever. But the reality of human biology is that emotion is a highly volatile fuel source. The second that emotion inevitably fades, the action just completely stops.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at some incredibly fascinating concepts to figure out how to rewire our approach to goals so we stop failing at week 3. And just to set some context for you listening, this particular deep dive is Episode 1, The Overview.
Which is such an essential starting point.
It really is. We are laying out the critical foundation today for a much broader, ongoing exploration of these principles across future conversations. Our mission today is to extract the core mechanics of consistency.
And what's interesting is that these underlying psychological themes are universally applicable to beating laziness and procrastination in real life.
Exactly. Whether you are finally sitting down to write a novel, trying to clean out your garage, or just attempting to get your personal finances in order. Okay, so let's unpack this. Where do we actually need to start to fix this burnout cycle?
It demands a fundamental shift in how you view the very nature of what you are doing. It's a concept that flips traditional motivation entirely on its head. The idea that people do not just buy what you are selling.
Wait, what do you mean by what you're selling?
In your everyday life, that means the new version of yourself that you are presenting to the world. Your friends, your family, your colleagues, they aren't buying your words. What they are actually buying is your change, your commitment, and your consistency.
Right.
They are quietly watching your ongoing actions to see if the results you are trying to sell them are actually real.
So to bring that out of the abstract, if I announce to my friends at dinner, like, hey, I'm a runner now, I'm doing a half marathon, they might nod and smile, but they aren't actually listening to my declaration.
No, they are reserving judgment. They are waiting to see if you actually lace up your shoes and go outside on a miserable, rainy Tuesday morning when literally nobody wants to be awake.
That makes total sense.
And if we take that a step further, it's not just your friends who are watching. Your own brain is watching you. This ties into a massive personal development concept regarding identity.
Okay, how does identity play into the burnout?
The core insight is this. You ultimately act the way you see yourself. Your deep-seated identity dictates your daily actions. If you secretly view yourself as a chronic procrastinator, you will inevitably find a way to procrastinate.
Because your brain wants your actions to align with your identity.
Exactly. To permanently change the action, you have to fundamentally change the internal vision of who you are.
Which, I mean, that sounds incredibly daunting.
It does, but there are very specific, subtle mindset tweaks to start shifting that identity. For example, being hyper careful about the actual words you use to describe yourself.
Which makes neurological sense, right? If you are constantly joking, oh, I'm so lazy, I'm such a mess, you aren't just being self-deprecating. You are literally programming your brain's reticular activating system to reinforce that exact identity.
It becomes a biological self-fulfilling prophecy. You have to stop letting your previous track record of failures dictate your current attempts. You must deliberately and proactively remind yourself of your past successes to fuel your current action.
I understand the psychology there, but I have to push back a little bit on behalf of anyone listening who is already juggling a job, kids, a mortgage, and is just tired.
Sure.
Isn't it profoundly exhausting to be so hyper-vigilant? If I am constantly monitoring my identity, curating my words, and policing my actions every second of the day, it feels like trying to run a marathon at a dead sprint pace. I am going to hit a wall and burn out even faster than I did on week 3.
And that very valid fear is the exact trap most high achievers fall into. It is precisely why there is an absolute golden rule here. Consistency beats intensity. Every single time.
So it isn't about just grinding harder.
Not at all. That is the old way of thinking. The new way is about making incredibly small, barely noticeable, but perfectly consistent improvements over time.
Lower the peak intensity, but drastically increase the frequency.
Exactly. When you rely on high intensity, you are inherently relying on high emotion. And as we discussed, human emotions fluctuate wildly based on sleep, stress, or even what you ate for
That's
lunch.
true.
You have to choose measured, deliberate responses instead of wild emotional reactions. You have to develop the specific discipline to regulate your emotions so that a simple bad mood doesn't completely derail your entire daily action plan.
Right, if I'm only taking action on the days I wake up feeling magically motivated, my progress is going to be incredibly chaotic. And there's another really interesting concept related to emotional regulation that caught my eye. It's called going for no.
Yes, this is a fascinating mental reframe regarding how we deal with rejection and friction. When we apply this to everyday life and personal goals, it means learning to actively embrace friction.
Embracing it how exactly?
It means accepting that failure, pushback, and rejection are not red flags signaling that you should quit. They are simply the natural, expected byproducts of forward motion.
You are intentionally building up a cognitive callus. By trying to get rejected or trying to hit that friction, you desensitize your brain's fear response to it.
Exactly. You neutralize the fear.
Here is where it gets really interesting, though, because shifting our mindset, curating our identity, embracing rejection, all of that is fantastic theory. But theory doesn't get you out of bed. How do we actually mechanize this on a Tuesday morning when the alarm goes off and the room is freezing?
This is where we transition from abstract philosophy to concrete, inescapable reality. There is a highly specific 7-part consistency system. It's an end-to-end blueprint designed to move an idea out of your head and into executed action.
Completely removing the reliance on willpower.
Exactly.
Let's ground this system in a real-world example so you listening can apply it immediately. Let's say my massive goal is to finally write a novel. How does this system tackle that?
Step 1 is the checklist. The primary enemy of action is ambiguity. You need to know exactly, down to the granular level, what you need to do. If your goal is writing a novel, your checklist item is not work on my book. That requires too much cognitive processing.
So the checklist must be like open laptop, open document, type 500 words.
Yes, you are systematically eliminating decision fatigue. You don't have to figure out what to do. The checklist already made the decision. Step 2 is time.
Meaning scheduling it.
Right, creating and fiercely protecting the schedule. You have to answer 2 specific questions. How will you make the time? And when exactly will you take action? And ideally, you do this at the exact same time every single day.
Which is biologically crucial for habit formation. Your circadian rhythm begins to anticipate the work. If you wake up every day and have to negotiate with your calendar about when you might find an hour to write, you will inevitably find a reason not to do it at all.
Because life always fills a vacuum.
All right, so I have blocked out 7 a.m. every day. Step 3 is strategy. This is the tactical plan for how you tackle the checklist. To use a metaphor, if your goal is going to the gym at 6 a.m., the strategy is laying your clothes out on the floor the night before, putting your car keys in your shoes, and filling your water bottle.
You are building a slide that forces you into the action.
The slide, exactly.
And that flows seamlessly into step 4, which is environment. Where will this action take place? You need a dedicated, context-specific physical space. If you are writing a novel, you cannot write on the same couch where you watch television.
Right. Your brain associates the couch with relaxation. You need an environment that triggers focus the second you sit down.
Step 5 is tracking. How are we measuring this to prove we are moving forward? We need that visual dopamine hit, whether it's a giant red X on a wall calendar or a word count tracker.
Because if we don't see the progress, it feels like we're just spinning our tires in the mud.
And to guarantee that progress, step 6 is the consistency toolbox. These are the built-in efficiencies that reduce friction. Dedicated journals, physical timers, digital time trackers, and gamifying the tasks to make them inherently rewarding.
I want to highlight a really tactical piece of advice here regarding the toolbox. It's about priming yourself for different times of the day using specific songs or playlists. It sounds small, but using a repeated audio cue to tell your brain, okay, this song is playing, we are now in work mode, leverages basic Pavlovian conditioning.
It absolutely does. And the key takeaway here is to make your actions easy, simple, and quick. Because the harder a task is to initiate, the more raw discipline it costs you.
And as we know, discipline is a rapidly depleting resource. If you make the very first step of your goal incredibly easy, simple and quick, like just opening a laptop and typing one sentence, you effortlessly bypass that massive initial wall of procrastination.
Exactly. But all 6 of these tools exist to support what I believe is the most radical, uncomfortable paradigm shift in this entire system.
Let the calendar be your boss.
Completely. The concept is that you intentionally set up your calendar to get you to your ultimate destination. When you are planning your week on Sunday night, you are the CEO. You make the big decisions.
But the second you wake up on Monday morning, you are no longer the CEO.
You become the employee. And you must have the unwavering discipline to listen to your calendar and execute the task, regardless of how tired or unmotivated you feel in that moment.
I'm not going to lie, that is a really tough pill to swallow for most of us. Because as humans, our favorite pastime is negotiating with ourselves. The alarm goes off, the calendar clearly dictates right for 1 hour, and the bargaining instantly begins.
Oh, always.
Well, I tossed and turned last night. I have a headache. Maybe I'll just write double the amount tomorrow evening.
Yeah.
This paradigm shift violently rejects that.
Mhm.
The CEO already decided on Sunday. You are just the employee today. You just execute the order.
It requires a severe separation of your planning self from your acting self. But here's the catch. Even if you perfectly implement the checklist, the strategy, the environment, and the calendar, you are still missing one foundational pillar. And without it, long-term consistency is statistically nearly impossible.
Which brings us to step 7, accountability, the external force. Who's actually going to force you to stay consistent when your own willpower runs dry?
It's a very stark, uncomfortable truth. Without accountability, it is practically impossible for human beings to remain consistent over the long haul. When we are entirely alone in our goals, we procrastinate. We let ourselves off the hook because there's zero social consequence.
Nobody is watching us fail. Accountability instantly solves the isolation problem. But I want to clarify what good accountability actually looks like, because I've tried this. Just shooting a casual text to a friend on a Thursday afternoon saying, "Hey, did you do your workout?" That usually fizzles out after about 4 days.
Oh, completely. It turns into a joke, or you both just agree to be lazy together.
It's way too casual.
Casual accountability is arguably worse than having no accountability at all because it provides the comforting illusion of a safety net without introducing any of the actual necessary tension. There are highly rigid, non-negotiable rules for how accountability check-ins must be structured to actually work.
All right, let's hear the rules. How do we build an unbreakable social system?
First is the matter of frequency. You can choose daily, weekly, or monthly check-ins with your partner, but the frequency of the connection is infinitely more important than the length. A hyper-focused 5-minute phone call every single morning is vastly superior to a sprawling 1-hour coffee date once a month.
That makes logical sense. High frequency keeps the daily actions top of mind, rather than letting you cram all your effort into the day before the monthly meeting. What is the next rule?
It must always happen on the exact same day, at the exact same time. Consistency becomes overwhelmingly difficult when there is no set scheduled time for the review. Furthermore, the call must have a strict time limit, like 10 minutes max, and it must follow a rigid, inflexible structure.
A rigid structure. So this isn't just hopping on a call to complain about how exhausted you both are.
Not at all. The moment it devolves into a venting session, it loses its power. There is a very specific 4-part format. And crucially, one person must speak on all 4 parts without interruption before the other person takes their turn.
Okay, what are the 4 parts we have to hit?
First, you show your wins and updates. What exactly did you accomplish from your checklist? Second, you provide value. You share a specific tip, a realization, or a strategy that worked well for you that week. Third, you clearly state the challenges or roadblocks you are currently facing. And fourth, you ask direct questions to get help from your partner. Once you finish, you switch.
What's fascinating here is how this structure completely removes the guesswork and the awkwardness.
Yeah.
You never have to wonder what you're supposed to talk about. You don't burn 20 minutes catching up on office gossip or television shows.
Right, you get on the call, you report the cold, hard data, you offer a piece of value, you ask for a solution, and you get off the phone.
By socializing the commitment, you make it incredibly painful to ignore your calendar.
You are essentially creating an artificial external force to battle against your own internal laziness. When, with absolute certainty that you have to verbally report your wins and your failures to another human being at 8 a.m. on Friday, you're exponentially more likely to just sit down and do the work on Thursday night.
And regarding that second step, providing value to your partner, that is a brilliant psychological trick. Teaching a concept or sharing a win actually reinforces your own mastery and commitment to the process.
It absolutely does.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. We talked about the profound shift from an outcome-based mindset to an identity-based mindset. We walked step by step through the 7-part consistency system, from killing decision fatigue with checklists to priming our brains. And we just broke down the uncomfortable but necessary rules for structured accountability.
That's a lot of theory.
It is. So how do we boil all this heavy theory down into one immediate, highly actionable step for the person listening right now?
We need to create a micro-habit, something entirely grounded in reality that puts these mechanical concepts into motion today, without requiring a massive reserve of willpower.
Here is the direct challenge we suggest. As soon as this deep dive ends, pick just one goal you've been putting off. Set a physical timer for a ridiculously short, manageable window. We are talking 15 minutes. Choose one specific song or playlist to instantly prime your environment and signal to your brain that the transition is happening.
And for just that 15-minute window, let the calendar be your absolute boss. No negotiating, you don't think about the outcome, you just execute the checklist.
By staying disciplined and consistent, we grow over time. It's compounding interest for our bodies and brains.
I really love that specific framing, compounding interest.
It completely destroys the myth of the overnight success. It isn't about getting rich quick or suddenly getting fit in a single weekend boot camp. It is about those tiny, unglamorous 15-minute deposits every single day that eventually snowball into massive, undeniable results.
It shifts your mental focus entirely away from the exhausting, massive effort and places the focus entirely on the simple, repetitive action.
So what does this all mean for you? It means that if you burned out on your last goal, it was not a personal moral failing. It was simply a system failure. By following proven mechanical methods and by choosing to make small, consistent actions rather than relying on intense, emotional bursts of hype, you can actually achieve the exact results you have been chasing for years.
You just have to do the hard work of building the structure first, and then have the humility to respect the structure you built.
It ultimately requires a deep level of self-respect to honor the commitments you make to yourself, especially in the quiet moments when absolutely no one else is watching. But that is exactly why that accountability piece is so vital in the early stages. You borrow the external pressure of a partner to help you build the internal habit until the habit becomes your identity.
I want to leave you with a final, slightly uncomfortable question to mull over today as you look at your own goals and schedules. If your calendar truly is your boss and you are its only employee, would you fire yourself based on this week's actual performance, or would you give yourself a raise?
Oh, wow. That is a brilliant question that demands a very honest answer from all of us. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Make sure to like and subscribe to get notified about the next episode, where we will continue building on this foundation and exploring exactly how to optimize these systems. Until then, go set your calendar and actually listen to it.